Good afternoon, Mister. Well, I chose the article called "Vocabulary Demands of the IELTS Listening Test and In-Depth Analysis." Well, the study starts by highlighting the importance of vocabulary knowledge when understanding listening. It also tells us that other studies have concluded that the larger the vocabulary, the better the listening comprehension is. And well, this study aims at exploring how vocabulary knowledge influences students' listening comprehension when taking the IELTS listening tests. First, let's talk about lexical coverage and listening comprehension. Um, well, according to other studies, it has been stated that in order to succeed in the listening comprehension section of an standardized exam, learners are required to be familiar with around 95 up to 98% of the lexis used. However, this demand can decrease in class or in real life scenarios because, for example, in class you can listen to the recording twice, and in real life scenarios you can ask the other speakers to repeat themselves. But in a standardized test, you can only listen once. Now let's talk about the lexical demands of English spoken discourses. Now, the vocabulary needed to understand spoken discourses varies depending on the genre. For example, academic lectures and new broadcasts require a larger lexical knowledge than, for example, casual conversations because the vocabulary there is more complex and academic. Now, the article suggests mastering the academic word list, which is a list of 750 words, frequent words used in academic tests. And well, this can reduce the lexical demand in the IELTS listening test. Now, how much vocabulary is needed to understand listening components in standardized tests? Well, um, although the number of word families a student needs to know and be familiar with may vary depending on the exam, for example, the IELTS or the TOEFL, the average of words that the student needs to master, of word families, sorry, that the student needs to master is around 3,000 to 5,000 words. And this will assure that the students do well on the listening section of these standardized exams. Okay, now what is the research gap between other studies and the present study? Well, this study aims at answering questions that other studies haven't been able to answer or clarify that much. For example, how much vocabulary is needed to acquire at 90% coverage of each section in the IELTS listening test, and to what extent the academic word list supports learners uh, who um, who are limited by vocabulary in this exam. Um, Now, the methodology and the results. Well, other studies have used just maybe 2 transcripts of IELTS practice test, 2 or 3, but this study used 15, which were used to determine the frequency of word families used. Um, and well, the results show that, as speculated before, about 3,000 to 5,000 word families were needed to do well on the listening section of the IELTS listening test. Now, the conclusion is that not only knowing up to 5,000 word families is necessary to succeed in the IELTS listening test, but also the knowledge of academic vocabulary. So you need to be familiar with some topics in order to do well on this listening section. Um, However, the lexical demand vary depending on the section of the test. So it's not the same for listening as for speaking, as for writing, and as for reading. Further research needs to be conducted in order to determine how much vocabularies needed to succeed in the other sections of the IELTS exam. Now, what is my point of view? I think the results of this study is significant because it can help educators to come up with a better plan when for exam preparation courses. But I strongly believe that vocabulary is not everything, and I think that in order to succeed in this type of exams, knowledge of the context and the topic is more important than vocabulary because you can use L1 um, to infer the meaning of the vocabulary in English that you have there if you are already familiar with the topic or know the answer in your own language. That's it. Thank you very much.